So, welcome back. And so, for this, our final lesson, before we come in to college, we are going to have a look here at revising writing. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the importance of proofreading. And as we do that, we're also going to revise language devices such as verbs. So, quick quiz proofreading. Get a pen and paper, and we're going to do this together. The first task is proofreading for punctuation. Please put punctuation in this description. So, press pause to do the task. I'm going to pause now for you, and we're going to look at this together. I'm going to read this aloud as it appears. Try and read it with me. This is a piece of descriptive writing, obviously a tiny extract from many paragraphs, based on the picture prompt below. Menacing clouds gathered, the rumble of thunder could be heard overhead from inside the little house. It sounded like nature was preparing to wage war on the island. Oh, that's confusing, isn't it? Why is it confusing? It's got no punctuation in it, so you have to put the punctuation in. So I'd like you to sit and reread this and think about where the punctuation should go. Now, a handy hint is to read it aloud, and wherever you naturally pause, that is probably where the thought finishes and the next thought starts. You can keep it simple and just use full stops and capital letters if you want, or you can use more complex punctuation. Okay, so let's have a look at the answers together. Pause if you need more time. And as I say, a handy hint is to always read aloud and think about where one thought ends and a new thought begins. Because remember that every sentence should be a complete thought. Your punctuation marks show where it begins and ends. Now here's a possible answer. Menacing clouds had gathered. So what have we got here? Well, if you have a look here, we've got menacing clouds. That's what we're talking about. That's your subject. We've got had. That's your verb. Every sentence needs a subject and verb. We've got gathered. That's also a verb, and it also acts here to finish and complete that thought. Here is a complete thought. It's a complete sentence. It has a full stop. The next sentence begins with a capital letter. Remember to always begin your sentences with a capital letter. And if you're typing, you put a full stop and then 2 spaces before you type the capital letter that comes for the next sentence. The rumble of thunder could be heard overhead. Rumble, the rumble. Okay, you've got your subject. Rumble of the thunder. Could is your helping verb. Okay, and you've got that complete thought. Okay, that's where it's coming from. Start a new sentence, capital letter. From inside the little house, it sounded like nature was preparing to wage a war on the island. Let's think about that again then. So we've gone from it all making no sense to menacing clouds had gathered. The rumble of thunder could be heard overhead. From inside the little house, it sounded like nature was preparing to wage a war on the island. Now we have a descriptive piece that makes sense and uses punctuation correctly. Okay, so have a think about that. Perhaps you used punctuation slightly differently. So here's a more challenging alternative. There's just the use of a higher level punctuation mark. Menacing clouds had gathered. The rumble of thunder could be heard overhead. Now we've got a semicolon. Okay, why is the semicolon there? Well, you've got the rumble of thunder could be heard overhead, which is one complete thought. And before we'd put a full stop. Oops, let's go back a bit. But this time, We've also taken from inside the little house it sounded like. Well, this is a new complete thought, but actually it's still talking about the sound of the thunder. So because those two ideas are kind of connected, yet also complete thoughts, we can use a semicolon. Now remember that a semicolon is kind of a softer full stop or a harder comma. A comma here wouldn't work. You'd be putting a comma where a full stop should go, but a semicolon works to say, look, these two ideas are about the sound of the thunder, and they're two complete thoughts, but look at their link together. So let's look at that again together. Menacing clouds had gathered. The rumble of thunder could be heard overhead. From inside the little house, it sounded like nature was preparing to wage a war on the island. So those are some examples of descriptive writing and looking to use punctuation correctly. Remember, for those higher marks, you need to be able to use a range of punctuation, but you've certainly got to make sure that the basics are there, and that's your capital letters and your full stops. Okay, another common mistake that lots of writers make is mixing tenses. What do we mean by mixing tenses? Well, we mean jumping from past to present, future to past to future to past, etc. So what that means is the person writing isn't noticing that they are using their verb tenses inconsistently in a way that is not consistent. And so the person reading becomes very confused because are we talking about something that happened before or are we talking about something happening now? So the first thing you've got to do is know your verbs. You need to be able to spot the verbs and think about why they might be wrong here, okay? Spot the verbs and think about the tense they ought to be in. Now let's read this text together. A long, lonely road wound into the distance. A car, which is travelling at speed, accelerated into a tight bend on the road. No person is there to witness the accident. Above, only an eagle saw. It screeches and flew away. So I just want to pause there and ask you to see if you can note down, and I'm just going to give you a minute to do this. Can you note down all of the verbs in this piece? Quickly now, pen and paper, write down all the verbs that you can spot. Now this is going to help you with language devices if you need to look at language and you want to make sure you're getting your verbs or adjectives, etc. correct. If you say the writer's using a verb, make sure it is a verb. So where are the verbs here? I'm going to go through this with you now very quickly. I'm just going to go through this very quickly with you, okay? So, wound, there's a verb. Is, and also travelling, to travel, but we're talking about tense, so at the moment we're going to go with wound and is. We're going to go with accelerated. We're going to go with is again. No person is there to witness, and again there's a verb, but we're going to just move on to these ones to do tense. Only an eagle saw, it screeches. And hopefully you spotted this one, and flew away. So wound, accelerated, is, saw, screeches, flew. Have a look at these. Wound, is that past or present? Is that past or present? Accelerated, past or present. Is past or present. Saw, past or present. Screeches, past or present. And flew, past or present. Okay, so now what we're going to do is look at that in a little bit more detail. Okay. So here are the verbs. I wanted to show them again. But can you keep to one tense? So I want you to look and decide which one is past or present, and then decide should this be written in past or present, and choose the matching verbs all the way through. A long lonely road winds or wound into the distance. You're going to make it present tense or past tense. Which is which? Write it down. A car, now make it match your first sentence, which was or is travelling at speed. Well, if you've done winds, would you have was or is to match that? If you had wound, would you have was or is? Accelerates, accelerated, which one would you choose so that they all match? No person is, no person was. Again, make sure it matches the ones above. Only an eagle saw or sees. It screeches or screeched. So very quickly, choose one and be consistent. Either make this all present or all past tense. Okay, pause if you need a little more time. I'm going to move on, okay? Okay, so example for present tense. Let's read this together now and see it makes much more sense. A long, lonely road winds into the distance. A car, which is travelling at speed, accelerates into a tight bend on the road. No person is there to witness the accident. Above, only an eagle sees. It screeches and flies away. So we've got present tense there. Okay, and so if we were to choose past tense verbs here, what would they have been? Past tense would have been a long, lonely road wound into the distance. A car which was travelling at speed accelerated into a tight bend on the road. No person was there to witness the accident. Above, only an eagle saw. Ooh, that was quick. Sorry. Oh, there we are. Let's go back. Above, only an eagle saw. It screeched and flew away. Can you see how much clearer it is? How much more easily sort of readable it is? So please, when you are doing creative writing, whether it is something like a formal letter or a formal report or a formal essay, or whether you are doing a piece of descriptive or narrative writing, it's really important to just take the time to spot your verbs and make sure that those verbs are consistent, okay? Because if you keep being picked up on that, it's something that you really need to be focusing on, all right? So I hope this really, really helps. And for those of you who just wanted to brush up on verbs, I hope this has helped you with spotting the verbs, okay? Because again, that can come up. You can talk about verbs often in language, or even as we've said before on question 4, when you talk about writers' methods. Okay, well done.